Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Lift and Shift podcast. I'm your host, Giselle Colonzo Douglas. And as you know, this is the place where we talk to amazing, phenomenal, talented, noteworthy women who are shifting higher in their career spaces and various spheres of influence. But what I love about them is that they are making sure to lift others as they climb. On today's episode, I'm very excited to be joined by Pastor Ebony Small, who is an executive leader, a strategist, a coach. She currently serves as associate pastor at the River Church in North Carolina under Bishop Ronald Godby. She's the author of this book that I've read, not just purchased, but read. It is called The Leader in You, Discovering Your Unexpected Path to Influence. And she's the president of Transforming Leaders Consulting. I asked Pastor Ebony to join us for this conversation to help continue our deep dive into leadership, what it is, how we find the leader within, how we deal with challenges that come with leadership, and ultimately how we succeed as leaders. Pastor Ebony, I've always found you to be a person of very wise counsel. So I know that you're going to have just nuggets of wisdom and information to share with us, not only from your own personal experience, but from a biblical perspective in terms of how we can maximize the leadership potential within ourselves, not only for our own kind of elevation and success, but for sure for those who are coming behind us. So thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, and congratulations on your podcast. This is a year of dreaming again and launching new dreams. So it's just amazing to be a part of your dream. So, congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So you're now obviously a very successful leader, but before we get to where you are now, take us back a little bit to young Ebony. Tell me about her and what were your professional goals and aspirations when you were growing up.
Young Ebony wanted to be a doctor, specifically an OBGYN. A young Ebony quickly discovered freshman year of college that she did not have the level of commitment that being a doctor required. Then she wanted to be like you and be a lawyer, and she quickly realized she didn't have the discipline for that as well.
Oh, no, I don't see that. Really? Okay.
No, I just wasn't committed to that level of study. And then I finally decided I am not going to be a career college student. So we're going to pick a major that
Mhm.
we enjoy. We're going to find a minor that we equally enjoy, and we're going to graduate. And so I graduated from the State University of New York at Binghamton. Right before my graduation, I had connected with an alumni. We went to, we had those alumni fairs. So if anyone is hearing this
Mhm.
and you're in college, go to your alumni fairs. I had an unexpected connect there with a professor at Fordham University who
Okay.
was also a professor as part of this graduate school mentorship program with Big Brothers
Mm.
Big Sisters of New York City, and she was training people to how to become mentoring supervisors. And we connected, and I told her I did not have a job after college, and she said, when you graduate, send me your resume. I'm going to connect you with some people that I know. This woman didn't know me from anywhere.
Mm.
I followed up with her when I graduated. She passed my resume along to some colleagues of hers over at Big Brothers Big Sisters, and I had my first job as a community liaison. It was probably the most exciting job of my life. I got
Oh,
to
wow.
plan parties and activities for the bigs and the littles, and I mean, we planned picnics and Christmas events and got endless amounts of toys donated. And it was just amazing. It was enriching.
Hmm.
Probably the only job that I ever had that I never took time off. I wasn't at that point in my career yet where I needed mental health days.
Oh,
So I never took a day off. I absolutely
wow.
did. And that was the launch of discovery, I would
Hmm.
say, of what my career ultimately would become. And it very much stayed in the vein of events management, events direction, and graduated from planning very small parties to major stadium and conference events. And that was incredible. But that was the launch
Hmm.
pad for me. And I, at the time, was not very, let's say, astute in my faith. I had certainly
Mm.
had a knowledge of God. I had accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior at the age of 11, but definitely I would say was living very much a religious experience. Went to church on those special holidays,
Mm.
Christmas and Easter and Mother's Day. Had no idea what it meant to have a relationship with God. And it was during this first job, being back at home from college, which was a huge transition in and of itself, in a very dysfunctional relationship, that
Mm.
I really felt like I was in a space of what I might classify now as some mild depression,
Oh, wow.
in a space probably for the first time in my life that I didn't really know what was next for me. I didn't have an outlook about the future. I didn't know where I wanted to be, what I wanted to do, but I had an intuitive knowing that I could turn to God. And I had this incredible encounter in my home, my parents' home, actually, in my bedroom, where I decided I'm going to have my moment with God. I'm going to pick up my Bible. I wasn't a learned person in the word. I didn't really
Hmm.
know anything, honestly. The only time I would touch my Bible is when we went to church. But I
Wow.
picked it up and I just said, let me read something here. I knew the red letters text meant that those are words that Jesus was directly speaking. So that's where I
Hmm.
meditated towards. And God's infinite wisdom and grace from my life, He directed me to Matthew chapter 15, verses 8 through 9, which read that these people honor me with their lips, but yet their hearts are far from me, and they follow rules that are taught by men. And I had the most amazing encounter in my room where my heart, I could literally say, was pierced. And
Wow.
having never had a God experience like that before, I
Hmm.
knew without a shadow of a doubt that God was describing the condition of my heart. That scripture that says, "My sheep know my voice, and the strangers they will not follow," is the truth. And I knew
Wow.
God was describing my heart, and immediately I just began to cry. And my prayer was simple. I said to God, I don't want my heart to be far from yours. Please draw my heart closer to yours. And it was in that space where I began to really struggle with whether or not I should venture out and going to church by myself. And we shared the same home church in New York, Bethel Gospel
Yes.
Assembly. And I had never went to church without my family. I struggled for about 2 years about whether or not to kind of lean into this stirring that I was feeling. I prayed for
Hmm.
a car because when you live in New York City, when you live in the outer boroughs, you live in what we call two fare zones.
Yeah.
You got
Oh,
to take
Lord.
the bus to the train, and it takes you 2 hours to get anywhere one way. And I
Right.
said, God, if you give me a car, I'm gonna go to church. And of course, He blessed me with the car, and I found the club. Yes, I was grateful to give friends rides home, but I did not get to church as I had promised. But eventually I made it. And
Okay.
I started going to church by myself without my family. I think I was probably about 25 at the time.
Hmm.
And I was pursuing God with everything that I could within me. And I remember one time at the altar, I said to him, I have tried everything. I have tried life on my own terms, in my own way. Your
Hmm.
way has to be better. And his way has absolutely not just been better, but it has been the best. And it has changed the very course and direction of my life. I get to meet, and had the opportunity to meet people like yourself. And I know firmly nobody would want me on their podcast if
Oh, stop it.
for Jesus turning my life around. He has given me purpose, has
Mm.
opened doors for me, and led me into vocational experiences that I could have never imagined for myself. And I could have never imagined having written a book that anybody would want to read and on leadership. But that's all to credit to what God did in my life, in my
Hmm.
bedroom, in the Bronx. That particular day, he really changed my life. So that's a little bit of my journey.
No, 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 that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. So now we know that you're deeply rooted in your faith. How do you think that that relationship that you just talked about kind of helped you discover the leadership within yourself?
My faith, I would say the anchor developed in this manner of feeling very much like I owed God my life,
Mm.
feeling that if it wasn't for God, how much deeper could I have been in a place of depression?
Mm.
How many more dysfunctional relationships, unequally yoked relationships might I had been a part of? and the devastation that can come from those spaces and places of brokenness.
Right.
And then ultimately being in careers that perhaps I wasn't fully maximized in the
Mm-hmm.
area of gifting, or having incredible people serve in my life as mentors to, mine that treasure that was within me. And anything that was good that I subsequently experienced in my life, I attributed all to God, because I knew that I didn't get there by myself and I couldn't do it for myself. And with every level of deepened revelation about who the person of God was to me, not just the God of my grandparents or the God of my parents,
Mm-hmm.
but whom God became to Ebony, that level of devotion, it deepens. And we understand, those of us that ascribe, to the faith of Christ, recognize that we are given gifts of the Spirit that are a part of our ability to, equip the saints for every good work of service and to serve the church. And one of those gifts that I would say there was certainly the the awareness that I
Mm-hmm.
was a leader, that was evident
Okay.
definitely from elementary school, junior high school. I navigated to student body leadership positions. People, certainly looked to me for influence or what have you. So
Mm-hmm.
this awareness that I had some gifting, but definitely not on the level of someone that would ultimately become this person that would not be just a leader in their own right, but would become a leader of other leaders,
Right.
and someone that God would uniquely use to unlock leadership giftings in others. And I would say where the inklings of that have come from is my desire to help be as transparent and authentic for people as I possibly can about the amazing things that God has done in my life, as well as the painful spaces and places
Mm.
where I have been, that God has also met me. And I find something that's really void oftentimes in our Christian experience or our Christian witness, that people are very good preaching at you,
Mm.
you what you should do, how you should live, what the word
Right.
says, but they don't invite you behind the scenes in their life, when they
Mm.
struggled, when they failed, when they sinned, when they came short, how God met them. And I wanted to be a person that was able to just be honest with people that it's not easy. I think some of the most hardest, fiercest life battles, experiences, and I know a lot about you, so I could say the same about you. The most
Yeah.
fiercest experiences of my life have come in the household of faith. That scripture, iron sharpening iron, I didn't know what it meant to be accused, falsely accused,
Oh
until
wow.
serving in the space of ministry. And I can go on and on and on about the refining of my faith in the place of
Mm-hmm.
difficulty. And we don't hear enough about that. But I don't want someone to feel like the church is going to be a utopia. It's not
Mm.
a utopia. Your faith will be the ark of safety, but people are not going to be your ark of safety. And if we can have those in our lives that are willing to be honest about those things, we will have a lot less people being so deeply wounded, offended, hurt, that they turn away from God because they equate God with people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I just want to be a part of what I ultimately have found people to be a part of in my life, not painting a picture through rose, colored glass,
Right.
being very honest that this is labor, ministry is labor, leadership is sacrifice, and all of that is a part of just the passions that I carry. But I'm at a season in my life where I deeply love coaching people, but it comes from this space of wanting to be invested in people's lives. I have seen those who view leadership as something that you keep very arm's length distance away. They never let people get too close,
Mm.
not inviting you over to their home. They only engage with you when it's beneficial for them to do so. But how about allowing people to be in a place of relationship with you where you can be naked and unashamed with them, but that you can also help go through life with them? And that's what I've experienced with me, people helping me go through life and being there to support me if I'm falling apart or if I'm having a mountaintop experience. And I just want to be that for others. And I think that's the essence of what leadership is. And Brene Brown talks about this in her book, Dare to Lead, that being
Hmm.
a daring leader means that you invest yourself in the lives of others. So anybody who tells me they're a leader and they're not investing directly in people, you are not a leader at all. You might be a motivational speaker,
Oh,
you can do
wow.
other things, but to be a leader means that you are investing yourself in others, and that's ultimately has emerged as the ethos of who I've become.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you to segue to that because so now you've written this book on leadership. I wanted to unpack it a little bit, kind of go a little step by step. Define leadership for me, besides what you just said in terms of investment in people and being transparent. But if you had to just give it a baseline, what is the definition for leadership?
Leadership is about helping to mine the treasure that is reflected in another person, helping to
Hmm.
bring a person from a continuum of ideals from point A to point Z, and helping to be a coach as part of their formative process, to bring them into a different and more fuller expression of themselves. And then coupling back to what I just said before, it also takes investment,
Hmm.
and it takes a willingness to expend yourself in the service of others. And I think all of that is a definition, if I would say, of what it means to be a leader.
So I've doing the podcast so far, I've found it interesting to pose that question. And another question that I've asked, and I want to get your take on, is whether leaders are born or they made. What's your take on that?
I believe leaders are made. There are
Okay.
disciplines that you need to uncover about how do you invest in someone's life in ways that are healthy. We are not, and I've always feel challenged when people say this is my mini me, or they're looking to make people
Mm,
a replica of themselves. I believe
okay.
you lose the true essence of who that person is uniquely created to be when you try to
Mm,
make them a carbon copy of you. There's only ever going to be one you. There was only ever one Jesus. There was only ever one Martin Luther King, only one
right.
X, so on and so forth. And that we can't live our lives trying to be the same as someone else was. We can certainly appreciate the attributes about them.
Hmm.
I love how she does this, or I love how he does that. I want to be refined in that way. Certainly, you can emulate the best of people, but our sole purpose and focus as we walk this earth is to understand what is it about us that would cause somebody to say, "Man, I want to be like Giselle. Like I want to do that like an Ebony." And
Mm,
that's what the purpose of a leader is, to be in your life, to help
wow.
you, to honor you, to celebrate you, to affirm you, but also to uncover you. And when you can help to uncover people, you're not trying to be a lid on their success. You want them to go farther than you could ever go. You want to celebrate this rooms and spaces that they'll step into you that you might never ever be invited into. You want the best for others. You're not narcissistic. You don't only want people to exist to serve you. you know
Right.
you want to serve others, and for me, that's the true essence of what it means to be a leader.
So, in this wonderful book that we're going to just continue to talk about, you talk about authentic leadership. So, are they different kind of leaders? What's the authentic leader versus a plain old leader? Like, talk to me about authentic leadership.
Yeah, authentic leadership is bringing your full self. This is something I quote often. I love Carla Ann Harris. If you are, a Wall Street person, you understand the impact she's not only had at Morgan Stanley but in the world.
Hmm.
And she said something to me that was not to me, excuse me. She said something that was really pivotal, that there would be oftentimes many meetings that she would sit in, and she felt like she could only be one part of herself. She could only be Carla
Mm,
Ann Harris, the businesswoman. But she got to a place in her life where she said she wanted to bring her whole self to the meeting. Carla
yes.
Ann Harris, the person that, I think she's Catholic, I think she also is an opera singer or something along those lines. All these different facets of who she is. She wanted to be able to learn how to bring her whole self to a meeting, and that to me is authenticity. when you are not having to put on airs or pontificate because you're trying to fit the room, and
Mhm.
keeping parts of yourself out the room because you don't want to be too one thing or too much of the other, but you have this level of comfortability in your own skin, so to speak, to be fully yourself, no matter if you are sitting with the president at the White House or if you sitting with your people, in your own house. And so
Mhm.
how do we grow and emerge into those levels of celebrating every aspect of who we are, but also understanding that it's the sum total of whom you are that makes you you. And I think one of the realities, particularly for people of color, we have
Mhm.
learned as part of our existence that you have to assimilate in order to be
Right.
accepted, from
Right.
your speech to your attire to your hair. And now we know hair
Yeah.
is being liberated, right? You can, come in and be yourself, but that wasn't always the case. You had to look
At
the
all.
part, you had to know
Mhm.
how to code switch. You had to understand where were the spaces that you could talk slang and you couldn't talk slang. We didn't
Right.
have the luxury of bringing our whole self into spaces. And for me, that is also a part of leading authentically, because you are authentically being you. But the other part of authentic leadership is, again, those elements, the elements of transparency, those elements of vulnerability. And I think that's so much of the key of what it means to be an authentic leader, that you are willing to be vulnerable and that you are willing to allow people to see the essence of you that is not refined, that is not polished, that is in desperate need of God, or maybe doesn't have understanding about things, but yet you still have faith. How many people allow you to come up close to them,
Mm.
not just want you to see the part of them that they want you to see? That's also
Right.
part of authenticity. And I would say another example of perhaps what the opposite of that might be, because we have very strong leaders that they have great intellectual minds. They are very
Mhm.
astute persons that certainly have a lot of wisdom and knowledge, and can impart such understanding to you, but you always recognize with those individuals that there's a limit to where you can go with them, and also to which they make themselves available. And when we think about that more broadly, that sends cues and messages to people that I don't fully know who you are. Because if you can't fully unpack, explain for me who you are, then you are only inviting me into the aspect of yourself that you want me to see. And I don't even know if that's the truth or not. So, can I trust you? Right. Dr. Sam Chan says the first responsibility of a leader is to define reality. So, how can you
Mm.
define reality for a person if your reality is not on full display for them? So being, let's say, unauthentic in your leadership, it creates distrust. It creates a limit to the levels that relationship with a person, let's say for a pastor with your congregation, it creates limits and levels to how deep you can ever go with them, because you're not ever willing to put your full self on display. And I just think that people are not ever going to have the opportunity to get the full essence of who you are when you limit what they can see and experience with you.
Right. And you yourself don't get the benefit of knowing who you really are if you are guarded in those spaces. I mean, you said a lot of things that really resonated with me. I know coming into the legal space, they were very defined ways that you could look. You had to have a bob. You could only wear certain colors. You know, and here I was, just funky hairstyle. I like my nails long. I like to wear heels. Um, and I started to embrace it at a point where I remember being on trial with a colleague, and the court officer came to me and said, "Oh, let me see what you have on, because that's what the jury's talking about. They want to know what shoes you have on today." And I actually started to use that as part of my strategy to kind of, make myself more approachable, or, to the jury, is that I've, walked in as myself even more. So there are definitely benefits and attributes to that. But you yourself have been, for 20 years, you've been serving nonprofit organizations. You've led high performing teams to put on these massive events that have impacted millions of people. How do you get to the point where you're like, oh, I have the skill set to do this? Right? You said you saw leadership capabilities in yourself. at a younger age. But when did you feel like, or maybe you haven't? I don't know. I'm making the assumption, but from what I see, it seems like you've come into the fullness, at least the surface fullness of your leadership abilities. Do you feel the same way?
I feel like I'm still very much emerging.
Okay.
I also feel very much that I'm learning new capabilities that I certainly did not know that I possessed. It'd be something
Mm,
different if I went to school for an acquired to learn an acquired skill, and so forth. And you learned this, you've studied this, you've mastered
yeah.
it. But so much of what my journey has been is uncovering along the way. The
Mm.
roles that I have held professionally, I feel very much that I was coaxed into those spaces. I was invited into
Okay.
those spaces by people who saw a level of potential in me that I necessarily didn't see for myself. I will say, probably now, while I'm in this space of changing kind of career paths a bit,
Mm,
it is probably the first time in my life where am fully in a space of, okay, I know I'm not doing A through N, that part of who I am, that season for my level of investment, like that's not the sum total of where I need to be right now. I want to be leading and serving an organization or a business in a different capacity, because these
okay.
are the dominant areas of my life now where I feel the most passionate. So the biggest distinction I would say is I look at life now, especially because of age, right? We realize
Hmm.
we really have a certain amount of more years, Lord allowing, that we can have impact. So, where do I want to be the most impactful? I'm not just looking for a job to work now. Now, I want a
Mm,
job that's a great value add. It brings the level of work life balance that I want.
yeah.
It is the most fulfilling. It's going to pay me what I feel that I deserve to be paid after having worked for 20 years. And
Hmm.
I'm in a space now where I am not looking for others to define for me what's possible. But that's probably for the first time in my life. Previous decisions, I think I was more amenable to what someone would say was best, either for that role or might have been what might be great for me. But now I'm not allowing other people to define what is great for me. I'm leaning into understanding, well, what does that mean for my life now? So that's certainly been a change, but I have largely been impacted by having leaders that were either the president of the company that I worked for or the CEO of
Hmm.
the company that saw something in me and said, Ebony, you can do this. And then me coming alongside and saying, yeah, I can do this. And if I can't, I'll figure it out. And so my journey in that way has been a bit different from those that I think might feel a bit more determined and more directed in terms of
Hmm.
where they want to be in their careers. I very much have been on this journey of, wow, I didn't even know this was in me, but it's here, and I really want to lean into
Okay.
this season of my life. And in terms of this person that is a leader of high performing teams, how do you get a team just from being a team to now being a team of performers? That so much of that for me just was on the job experience,
Mm,
particularly when I was planning this 3,000 person event at the Jacob Javits Convention Center with leaders from over 95 countries. It was
wow.
the first time that the organization that I worked for had ever undertaken such an idea. It was to be a 3-day conference. We had to plan for housing, and there was so much that had to be researched. And I had to, create this strategic plan of how do I
Hmm.
execute, our president's vision, and then start thinking about, well, what's the team that I need to have? What's the skill sets that I need to have of this team? But all of it, so much of that decision making came from my having to understand first that I couldn't do it all. Because when I first
Mm,
started to work for that organization, I was the only one that was focused on doing events. But I had to understand it. I can't work 14 hours a day and still be functioning. And you get
right.
anything that's of substance out of me. And I learned how to build teams. And then I learned that all help is not good help. Some people don't have
Mm,
the skill set, they don't have the capacity, they don't have the business acumen. They are more of a detriment and a slowdown for you than they are, giving you increased productivity. So how do you hire more soundly? And then in the nonprofit space, they never have money, right? So now how do I have a mixture of employees and contractors to still accomplish
Right.
the things that I get need to get done? And again, all of that led to my understanding how to develop people, how to develop
Mm.
resources, how to work with little, how to work with a lot, how to handle an event that might have an $8 million budget versus an event that has a $500,000 budget. But all of it were just tools that I came to pick up along the way, and then also got to live it out on a different level in the local church space with having your volunteer led teams and
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
same
Mhm.
measures of productivity out of a volunteer workforce. And it's just been an amazing learning laboratory, each role that I've had the opportunity to serve in.
So did you and can people have a very practical way to kind of decipher what their skill set is? I know that when I was at Bethel, I don't even remember what ministry it was, but we took a test, an assessment, to kind of figure out what our spiritual gifts were. That's what it was. It was a spiritual gift set. But if I'm not kind of not as clear about what my skill sets are and what my capabilities are, what's the way that I can kind of uncover that?
Yeah, there are tons of assessments. I'll name a few. There's Myers Briggs, which helps you to understand your learning style. There is also something called Strengths Finders, which
Mm-hmm.
will help to identify what are your top areas of strengths. Are you a learner? Are you strategic? Again, there's that too. There's also the Highlands Battery Assessment. Again, another assessment tool to help you uncover how you think, but also to pick up and identify for you what could be areas of blind spots.
Mm-hmm.
There might
Mm-hmm.
be other personality types that you might have a little bit more difficulty working with, and why. A lot of
Yeah.
times we use the everyday terminology of so and so rubs me the wrong way. No, they have
Mm.
a personality style, a leadership style, a learning style that might be something that is in direct contrast to yours. So how
Right.
take things out of a feeling space to understanding that in the world of work and in the world of people, a part of
Of light.
in life, you have to learn how to work with different personality types. And if you're more educated and again, take things out of the emotional space, you can be more effective in your work. So this is why I love these tools. I love these types of assessments. I know Marcus Buckingham has other assessments. I just had to take an assessment recently called the Thinking Wavelength. Again, also helping you to understand, are you a creative person? Are you
Mm-hmm.
effective? And all of those have just been very illuminating to understanding personality types, learning styles, your work style, and also helping you to define what types of careers will you thrive
Mm.
in. So one of the things that I've come to learn about myself is that I'm a high strategy person. So I'm going to thrive in roles that involve strategic direction, that involve organizational leadership, that I'm great for roles at the executive level. But again, I'm understanding all of this because I understand the skills that I bring beyond what you're putting together on your resume. So I would
Right.
encourage anyone to explore those resources, to and be a part of or invest in leadership or learning development programs that just help to refine your acumen and your skill set. Because certainly, as you want to climb, let's say, the ladder of success, so much more of that is going to be about principle and skill versus talent. We all understand that talent is not going to sustain you, right? LeBron James is talented, but he also invests $1 million+ in his body to keep him
Yeah.
the level of performance and to sustain a multi-year career and to be around to play with your kids.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't
Mm-hmm.
just happenstance fall into that. That's taken investment. So talent is one thing, but skill is another, expertise is another, and those are spaces that you actively have to work at and cultivate.
So sometimes, despite all of that, you've invested, you have the capabilities, you've taken the test, you know that you are a leader, but you're put in a position perhaps where you feel ill-equipped because it's new, novel, maybe bigger than what you've done before. And for a lot of leaders, we tend to be certain personality types where failure is not something we encounter often, and some of us don't know how to navigate when we feel, like we're just not prepared. And one of the things that you talked about in the book is you used Moses as an example of someone who felt ill equipped for the assignment before him. Can you just talk about him and just for leaders, how you can kind of navigate if and when such a situation arises?
Opportunities for you to uncover, let's say, aptitudes that are within you that you had no idea were present will emerge in spaces of difficulty. When you
Mm-hmm.
are given assignments, tasks, responsibilities that are out of your comfort zone
Yeah.
or in the realm of things you've never done before that are going to stretch you. And those experiences are not ones that you should run from, but that you have to run towards. And
Mm.
so, in the instance of Moses, here he was given a very spiritual task. So,
Mm-hmm.
the person that could be the best helper for him was God. And
Mm-hmm.
he had to turn to God's, certainly his direction. And how am I going to lead these people, these stiff necked people, from a place that they have been comfortable in for years, for generations?
Mm.
You want me to be a part of bringing about a generational paradigm shift when I don't even know how to spell paradigm. So help me, Lord, how to do that. And
Right.
he acts and really makes a very simple declaration: do not send us from this place unless your presence is going to go with us. And God's
Mm-hmm.
response to him is that my presence will go with you and that I will give you peace. And so, for us who are part of the household of faith, when we are in these situations where we are facing daunting tasks before us, certainly we need to ask for the presence of God to go with us and grant us much success. Like, let's not reinvent the wheel there. But then,
Mm-hmm.
in the case of practicality, perhaps this is a fine time for you to seek out mentorship in this area. Where are those that have gone before and conquered? How do you network? Now we have a plethora of resources in the space of YouTube or other learning laboratories. I mean, everybody is an
Mm-hmm.
expert. Go to TikTok. Where can you get the maybe it's just the mental forethought, the stimulation of thought? Where can
Yeah.
you go to get what you need in order to become what you need to become? So now you have to step outside of yourself. I know you're wonderful. I know you're fantastic. You feel like you've arrived, but none of us are ever at a space where we're learning stops. So
Right.
now, how
Right.
do I
Right. Right.
become what I need to be for this assignment? And what I always try to underscore for people is that leadership is about an assignment. Even if you look at it from a biblical standpoint, God
Mm-hmm.
God raised up the leaders that were needed based upon what the needs of the people were. When the people needed a deliverer, he raised up a deliverer. When the people needed revelation and perspective, it was a prophet that was raised up. When the people, needed, someone to birth, make sure there's the lineage that can birth and bring forth Jesus. We have people that are helping to make sure someone escapes a particular area. You have the presence of Ruth. You have all these realities of a larger, broader continuum that you are a part of to bring about a place of revelation. But leadership is always erected to respond to a need. Jesus responded to our need of salvation. He raised up disciples because there would be a need for a church so that we
Mm.
could continue to be equipped in our faith even after he was gone. He implemented leaders in the church so that people could be taught the things of God. That's why there are elders, that's why there are deacons, and so on and so forth. Every leadership assignment is meant to fulfill a need. And if you look at that in the business structure, it is no different. You need your CFO, you need your CEO, because you need people who are going to oversee a particular element, aspect of that business or that nonprofit, because there's a need there to
Mm-hmm.
find money, to make sure we are in compliance, that we are fulfilling all of our regulations. Everyone is responding to a need. So when you look now, you bring it down myopically to your position. What is the need? What do I need to become? in order to steward this assignment to the very best that I can be. And that's just not only in the four walls of the church. As part of our Christian experience, we are sent out into whatever sphere of influence that God has placed us in. If that's the courtroom, how do I become what I need to be the best criminal defense attorney, or so on and so forth. If we approach our opportunities with understanding that I'm always going to need to be maximized in my area of just learning, we will look to get help versus succumbing to what we don't know, allowing pride to hold us hostage because we don't want to ask for help or even acknowledge that we don't know where to begin. And sometimes
Mm,
you might need to say that I don't know where to begin with this, and let somebody be a part of just saying that one thing to you, that helps to stimulate your thinking towards something broader. So I would say if you find yourself in a space where you feel like the task is beyond you, then
yeah.
certainly you want to bring yourself into a community that your thinking is infused. You want to go out and research what you can. You want to refine your craft. And if on the opposite end of the spectrum, if you are in a position where you're being underutilized,
Mm,
you are not flourishing in your areas of greatest gifting and capacity, well, that's when you need to make a shift, and you need to be not wasting precious time and getting yourself into opportunities that will allow you to flourish, versus opportunities that will allow you to become complacent and complicit. And certainly we don't benefit when anyone is not operating at their best. So those would be my recommendations.
absolutely. Oh my goodness. So all of that and more is in your book. But tell me why, what prompted you to write the book?
Well, I was invited to write this book. Here it is again, me being coaxed into things.
Okay.
An amazing woman who's the director of editorial at InterVarsity Press. Her name is Cindy Bunch, and she had been a part of a writing project with the president of the then nonprofit that I worked for, and God put it on her mind to ask him had I ever considered writing, and he passed her along to me. And because I certainly was operating from a space of having received prophetic word that I would write a book, it was always in
Okay.
the back of my mind, but it wasn't anything I sought out to do, and not anything that I was actively working towards. And she and I met one day in Nashville, Tennessee. We were both there for a conference, and she invited me to think about it. And it took probably a long time for me to say,
Hmm.
yes, let's do this. But I didn't set out to write a leadership book. I thought that I would write a book about my life. And
Okay.
kind of thank God for honest people. She was like, okay, that's wonderful, but do people really want to read that? And I was like, gosh, like they don't want to read this. This is
I'm interesting. Oh
lifetime TV worthy. She was like, no, that's not it. And she
well.
very much,
Hilarious.
let's think about your generation, right? Here you go. People that are helping you to think broader than what you can think of for yourself. She said, let's think about
Yeah.
your generation. Let's think about younger leaders. Let's think about, again, those that are trying to put the puzzle pieces of their life together in ways that, you have been able to. How about we write about that? And I thank God for InterVarsity. They invested in me. They aligned me with an amazing writing coach, Linda, who was another person who was very honest with me, brutally honest. If I delivered her a few chapters, I remember one time she said to me in response back, "I can tell you didn't put a lot of effort into this." And I was like, "Gosh, like how did she know?"
Yikes.
Yeah. But she pushed me, and I'm just grateful to have people and have those particular individuals that were willing to take a risk on me. And we put that book together, and it became this project that I just didn't anticipate it would ever be. And there are things that I even wrote about in the book that sometimes someone might mention to me, and I'm like, man, I
I
wrote
wrote that.
all that in there. I'm like, that must have really been the Holy Ghost that day, because I am very private. I know I shared about a relationship that I had. I was just like, man, you just showed it off. But it was amazing to have done that. And it brings me actually to something else that I just kind of want to mention about
Hmm.
who we surround ourselves with. And
Mm.
when we think about how is it that someone as powerful, and I think we can look at so many examples in the news present day and to see people who are just complete and utter narcissists. And
Yeah.
how did they get to those spaces and places in their life where, the sky is no longer blue. It's whatever color
Hmm.
you want it to be that day. And I find that the grounds around them where you have so many people that have become yes men in their life are unwilling to challenge patterns of thought, ways of thinking that are just out of touch with reality, and for the sake of their ability to go along for the ride that they believe this other person is going to take them on, the opportunity for power, for privilege, for
Yeah.
money,
Money.
they
Yeah.
will sacrifice and forsake their ability to be honest because the person that they're around does not want to hear truth. And so, if you don't ever want to become a leader that is allergic to truth and honesty, and you
Ooh.
want to be pushed into a place where you can be the best version of yourself that you could possibly be, do not surround yourself with people who are yes persons, people pleasers, or people who will be intentionally dishonest with you because they just want to stay in your good graces. Always surround yourself with people whom will push you, agitate you, annoy you. If Jesus could endure Judas, certainly you can
Mm.
endure and have purpose for Judas.
Yeah.
Certainly you should have people around you continually that challenge you in your thinking, because oftentimes they're saying to you what others won't, but they will help you come to a broader result, an end goal that you would not have gotten to if they were not in the room. And so you don't want to exclude from the room the people
Hmm.
that you might find the most difficult, because even difficult people have a purpose. And that's something that I had to remember, and I had to learn that I need honesty. The book would have not been what it ended up becoming if Linda didn't push me on certain things and wasn't honest with me in her assessments, and I needed that. And so we need people in our lives like that.
Wow. All right. So, we can talk all day, but
Yes.
time does not allow. So, I want to finish on with two thoughts from you, if we could. First, tell me a little bit about Transforming Leaders Consulting, how that came about, and what it is that you do there.
So, and one of the many things that will go down in the trilogy of 2020, I
Okay.
launched Transforming Leaders right before the pandemic. I thought that it would be a great platform and opportunity with the book, The Leader in You, being released
Hmm.
later in that year, to afford me kind of space and place to coach leaders, as well
Hmm.
as train and consult with organizations and businesses that wanted to broaden their leadership acumen with regard to organizational leadership principles, and as well as leadership development type trainings, either for their specific leaders, staff, what have you, or again, if it was on an individual level of coaching. And so, Transforming Leaders has become that space and place for me, where I have those opportunities to invest in people and invest in businesses and teams in ways that uniquely align my passions from a personal level to, as well as a corporate and leadership level, about what I feel that organizations best need to successfully achieve and attain mission and vision. And so that has been the vehicle by which I've had opportunity to do that over the past, well, I guess we're going on 3-4 years
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
So yes, that's how Transforming Leaders was birthed.
Okay. Let's end with this. What is an important lesson that you've learned about what it is to be a leader?
Wow, humility
Mm.
and sacrifice. With every desire that I have had to see people reach a level of potential that they did not know was possible, I had to first go places that I had not been, so that
Mm.
I could implore and encourage people that that place was both attainable and possible. And what that has tangibly looked like in my life is surrendering to very hard decisions that I felt like were required of me at the time, taking a job out of state, when I had been working with a particular organization for almost 10 years, but taking a
Mm.
risk because
Mhm.
I felt like there was an opportunity for me that I was to pursue. And entering into this space of before the whole world was working from home, understanding what remote work looked like, and
Yeah.
having space and opportunity to explore new dimensions and new realities, and then being invited into a space where I felt like God was calling me to move from New York to North Carolina in 2021, and someone whom never had thought that I would ever have left New York City, but very much felt that God was calling me, and I had to live that out before everyone. People who were just like, "Did you have a bad dream? Did you eat something late and
Oh
dream
God.
this reality?" But making a bold decision, taking a leap of faith because I heard the voice of God, and so much of what the decisions in my life have become have been these radical faith-filled decisions that I might not have a chorus of people championing me in.
Mm.
The only thing that I am standing upon is that I've heard from God. And when you can step out into spaces within your life where it doesn't matter who goes with you initially, but you are doing what you feel a conviction to do. Perhaps it's starting that business, or perhaps it's being a part of your kids' PTA or the community board, or wherever you're feeling stirred about something, you have deep conviction about it. It might not seem like a righteous act, but it's something that you were gifted for, and God is going to show up in it because that desire and that need is a need. Remember, leadership is responding to a need. You are responding
Mhm.
to a need
Mhm.
within a particular space. And I would teach people that humility will take you far when you enter in a room to learn from it, not to command it based upon everything you feel that you know. You will go farther, and you will have a better rapport and a greater level of respect with people. The generation I think behind us are,
Mhm.
millennials, Gen Z, Gen Y. I would implore them, learn what it means to honor those that have gone before you. Don't just
Mm.
demonize people who you feel like are complacent, silent, and complicit, but understand how they got to be where they are and the things they had to sacrifice to sit in the seats that you might feel they're unqualified to. I guarantee you, if you want to learn more about people, you will sit to listen to them versus indict them and cancel.
Wow.
And then ultimately sacrifice. We are going to attain our the things in our lives that we did not know were possible if we are willing to sacrifice what feels comfortable, what feels safe, and be willing to take risk, and do things that you never thought that you would do, and be willing, even when you feel ill-equipped and unprepared, to say the same thing that Moses said to God: don't send me from this place if you're not going to go with me. And allow God to assure you that his presence is going to go with you. And not only is he going to give you peace, but that he's going to prosper you. And once you've heard from God, you could take on every naysayer,
Indeed.
stand firm and stand tall, and know that I am standing on a promise, and the promise keeper will deliver. And that has been my conviction and my anchor, and God has not failed me yet. And so I am going to keep going.
Yes, yes, yes. Applause, applause, applause. Thank you so much, Pastor Ebony, for this master class on leadership. I mean, for sure, I've gained such insight. I've definitely gained nuggets that I'm going to apply to my own leadership journey. Thank you for sharing with such passion that which clearly the Lord has laid on your heart in terms of your investment into other people so that they can maximize their potential and be the best that they can be. So we're so proud of you, grateful for you. Continue to lift others as you climb. I know that God has amazing things in store for you, that you are going to take that leap, and I can't wait to see it come to fruition. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Talk soon.